Discover the incredible, life-changing journey of a family transformed after 10 hidden years of struggle. Once upon a time in the small Midwestern town of Maplewood, the Johnson family stood as the shining example of the American dream. Mike Johnson, a sturdy man with calloused hands that told of years spent in the local factory, had always been the rock for his wife, Sarah, and their two children, Emily and Jake. But this picturesque life unraveled like a well-worn quilt, the kind you'd find at a neighborhood potluck, tattered yet comforting. Automation swept through their world, replacing hardworking folks like Mike with cold, emotionless machines. And just like that, the local factory, once the lifeblood of the community, turned into a ghostly shell, leaving Mike to stare into a void of uncertainty while despair crept in like unwelcome fog. Maplewood buzzed with the hum of familiar routines. Neighbors exchanged baked goods, and every Sunday, the congregation filled the local church to bursting. But behind the closed doors of the Johnsons' warmly painted home, an air of grief settled in. The laughter they once shared was stifled by the worries and fears that clung in silence. "What should we do?" they whispered in the dark, too proud and frightened to share their struggles with friends who themselves might be veiling their own heartaches. Then one crisp autumn morning, after a restless night filled with dreams soaked in doubt, Mike cracked open his last dwindling savings. The old garage, once a haven for tools and family projects, was transformed into a sanctuary of hope, a woodworking business born from love and nostalgia. The smell of fresh-cut pine replaced the despair that once clung to him. Meanwhile, Sarah found a spark of her own. With a determined heart, she envisioned the overgrown eyesore of their backyard transforming into a vibrant community garden, a sanctuary that could rejuvenate both the soil and the spirit of their neighbors. As the seasons changed, so did the climate of their hearts. The garden became a patchwork tapestry of lives coming together, with single mothers, elderly neighbors, and children shyly mingling among the soil. Yet doubts continued to swirl around them. Some locals raised eyebrows, questions flickering like quicksilver across the diner coffee table. What do they think they know about farming? The tight-knit community, once a haven, felt like a snowbound fortress. But as the Johnsons rallied to reclaim their identity, an unexpected storm began to brew. Parking a small truck beside their garden, large for sale signs adorned with ominous warnings about the local ordinance threatened to uproot what little growth they had sown. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With their dreams on the verge of collapse, the Johnsons stood at a crossroads of vulnerability and strength. Could they pull together the very community they sought to uplift, or would private fears unwind the fabric of hope they had begun to weave? As the looming threat drew closer, the question hung in the air like a dark cloud ready to burst. Would they face this challenge together, or would their fears put a final nail in the coffin of their family's aspirations? The Johnsons gathered in their kitchen, the smell of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the lingering scent of damp earth from the community garden outside. Mike looked at Sarah, his brow furrowed with worry. "We can't let them take this from us," he said, the weight of hopelessness heavy in his tone. "I know," Sarah replied, her fingers nervously toying with the edge of her worn apron. "But what can we do? They have the law on their side." Behind her eyes, determination flickered like a beacon in the twilight. She glanced at the children, their faces smeared with dirt and innocence as Jake and Emily shared whispers about their friends in the neighborhood. "I'll fight for it," Mike declared, a flame igniting in his chest. "I'll go down to that city council meeting and make them see all we've built. We've made this place alive again." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the kitchen, the uncertainty wrapped around them like a suffocating blanket. Would they be able to rally enough support in time? Or would they face the wrath of a governmental gavel smashing down on their dreams? The next morning, Mike slipped on his jacket, a symbol of his resolve, and headed for the local library where the council session would take place. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of judgment and potential scorn from the townsfolk gnawing at his insides. As he pushed through the library doors, the chatter of voices filled the air, and for a moment, he felt a pang of dread wash over him. He took a deep breath, shaking off the feeling, and scanned the room. Neighbors sat in groups, sipping coffee and sharing laughter, oblivious to the storm brewing in the corner. But he caught sight of Mrs. Peterson, a sweet lady with gray hair who had been nurturing her tomatoes next to their garden. She caught his gaze and gave him a warm nod. That simple gesture fueled his courage. When it came time for public comments, Mike's heart raced. He approached the podium, his hands clammy, and looked out at the familiar faces watching him. "I'm Mike Johnson, and I stand here today not just for my family, but for all of us. Many of you know the struggles we face. Our garden has brought life back to this community, transformed weary souls, and fostered friendships that have been buried beneath the rubble of hardship." A murmur rolled through the crowd. He pressed on, words spilling out in earnest. "We need to support each other, not tear our community apart. This garden isn't just our dream. It's a lifeline for so many. We should be protecting it." As he spoke, he noticed discontent shift among some of the council members. They were whispering, casting glances at each other that felt like hot coals to Mike's confidence. Just when he thought he had them on his side, a familiar voice rose from the back of the room. "Why should we allow this? You're just a factory worker who thinks he can play farmer." Gasps echoed in the library, and Mike's heart sank. The voice was none other than Derek Blanchard, the local businessman who had wanted to buy the land for his own profit. Suddenly, the room spun. A tide of ridicule threatened to engulf him. Desperation coursed through his veins. How could he shift the tide? He could feel the weight of his family's hopes on his shoulders, the community's eyes searching for a sign of fortitude. He clenched his fists, ready for battle. "What do you say, Maplewood? Will we let fear dictate our lives, or fight for the community we believe in?" The tension crackled in the air as every eye turned toward the council. Were the Johnsons destined to lose their last sanctuary, or would they find an unexpected ally in their darkest hour? In that moment, hope hung precariously by a thread, ready to snap. As silence engulfed the room, a single voice broke through the chaos, trembling but clear. "I support the Johnsons." The identity of the voice sent jolts of shock through the crowd, as eyes widened in disbelief. Was this the turning point they so desperately needed? The applause erupted like thunder, momentarily drowning out the whispers that raced through the crowd. Mike turned, his heart pounding, searching frantically for the source of the voice. A young woman stood up near the back, her face flushed with emotion. He recognized her as Chloe, the teenager who had tended to the garden when she had been just a small girl. Memories of her laughter and the way she planted seedlings with joy flooded his mind, filling him with a rush of hope. "I always believed in what you were doing, Mike," Chloe shouted, her eyes sparkling with determination. "You never gave up on that garden, and it's given so much back to all of us." The murmur of the crowd shifted, energy rippling through the room. Faces once filled with doubt began to soften, solidarity surfacing like warm sunlight after a storm. Mike felt the weight on his shoulders lighten, his momentum building. "Chloe's right." Another voice chimed in, this time from the middle of the room. Old Mr. Thompson, whose patchy vegetable garden often traded beans and carrots with the Johnsons, stood with his cane, shaking it in defiance. "I've seen that garden thrive, bringing families together. We need it." A chorus of agreement erupted from the crowd, swelling with renewed energy. The townsfolk began to stand, one by one, forming a wave of support. Mike's chest swelled with pride and gratitude. This was a moment he had never thought possible, but the council members weren't so easily swayed. Derek Blanchard's sneering face twisted in anger as he rose to counter. "These are just empty sentiments. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. This land could provide real jobs and real income for Maplewood." Mike felt a knot of anxiety twist within him. Could Derek's words still ignite fears in the community? "Who says we can't do both?" Chloe shot back. "We can grow a garden and jobs. It's not either or, it's about balance." The room surged with agreement again, filling Mike with energy. Yet, a shadow lingered in his mind. Each passing moment intensified the tension, as he could feel the stakes climbing higher with every heartbeat. Derek was cunning, and as the local moneyman, he had a way of twisting the narrative just enough to sway opinions. "Let us vote," Someone from the crowd shouted, echoing the sentiment of the room. But another voice, softer yet more insistent, rose in response. But wait, what if we're offered a settlement that changes everything? Gasps filled the air, the crowd shifting uneasily. Mike's heart dropped. Were they really considering surrendering to the man who sought to destroy their dreams? He had just ignited this fire of hope, and now it could be extinguished by a flicker of greed. Don't let fear win. We've fought so hard. We are more than just pawns in a game, he implored, desperation creeping into his tone. This is about our family, our community, our future. As Mike's voice rang through the library, every eye bore witness to his earnest plea. Would they stand firm against Derek's darkness? Or would they waver in the face of unsettling promises? Amidst the swirling emotions, clarity began to emerge in the dimming light of the room. A vote was not just a vote. It was a stand, a choice of what they truly valued. But before they could respond, a door creaked open at the far end of the library, and an unexpected figure stepped inside, a figure cloaked in shadows with an unreadable expression. Mike squinted, waiting for the person to step into the light. Would this be the ally they needed, or a foe that would plunge Maplewood into an even deeper conflict? The uncertainty hung thick in the air, ready to shatter the fragile hope they had just woven together. The figure lingered for a moment in the doorway, shrouded in the fading light, before stepping into the illuminated space. Gasps erupted as the crowd recognized the newcomer. It was Grace, the mother they thought had vanished without a trace a decade ago. Her hair was longer now, wild and unkempt, but her eyes held a fierce determination that silenced the room. Grace? Mike breathed, disbelief gripping him. He never imagined she would return, especially now, when hope was flickering like a candle at the edge of the storm. She raised a hand, as if to calm the rising murmurs. I need to speak. Her voice cut through the tension, commanding attention. I've watched from afar. She paused to gather her thoughts, the weight of her absence suddenly palpable. I thought you were all better off without me. But I've learned something. We can't just let this land, this garden slip through our fingers. The crowd stalled in shocked silence, their eyes flickering between Grace and Mike. Would her unexpected return solidify their resolve, or create chaos that undermined their ideals? Haven't we all suffered enough? Grace continued, her voice trembling but steady. Derek wants to destroy what this community stands for. He wants to take everything we've built and turn it to dust for profit. I've seen it happen in other small towns, and it can happen here if we don't stand together. Yes, Chloe shouted, the fire of conviction reigniting. We believe in the garden. We believe in you, Grace. The room buzzed with renewed energy. Mike could hardly process it all. Grace's presence had thrust a new life into their struggle, energizing the crowd as they began to chant, United we stand. But somewhere beneath that wave of enthusiasm, fear simmered. Would Derek leverage Grace's return to deepen the rift in their community? Mike couldn't shake the image of Derek standing smugly in the shadows, ready to exploit any vulnerability he could find. He glanced back at Grace, trying to read her expression. Her eyes were full of a mix of hope and something deeper. What had she experienced? Had the years away changed her resolve? Just as Mike was about to speak, motion caught his eye. Derek was rising from his seat, a smug grin spreading across his face like a wolf acknowledging a challenge. He leaned into the microphone, his voice smooth and menacing. Tell me, Grace, what do you know about the settlement we've proposed? You know they can't resist an easy payday, don't you? His words dripped with disdain. Gasps echoed through the library. Mike could feel the pulse of fear shudder through the crowd. Derek was trying to sow doubt, planting a seed that could grow into chaos. Grace squared her shoulders. What I know is that this community fought for the garden long before I disappeared. I may have been gone, but my heart remained here. You are all fighting for something more than money. You're fighting for your legacy. A resolute silence followed, but threads of uncertainty still wormed their way through the room. Mike could sense the weight of the decision ahead, knowing that now they had to balance their dreams against the temptation of comfort. As the crowd began to weigh their options, the message was clear. The vote was approaching, but the real stakes were about to be laid bare. With the air taut, uncertainty clung to every heartbeat, echoing through the library. Would they stand firm against Derek's devilish charms and Grace's haunting return? The moment of decision loomed. Mike's hands trembled slightly, and he took a deep breath, ready to push through the thick tension. But before he could speak, the door creaked once more, revealing yet another figure waiting in the shadows. A figure whose mere presence promised upheaval in an already fragile moment. What secrets would this new arrival bring? And would they tip the balance forever? The figure stepped out of the shadow and into the light, revealing a tall man with a leather jacket, his face half hidden by a worn cap. A ripple of discomfort slid through the room like a gust of cold wind. No one had seen him in years, not since he had vanished alongside Grace. It was Ethan, the estranged brother Mike had given up for dead. Well, what a family reunion, Ethan said, his voice coated with sarcasm. The crowd gasped again, their disbelief morphing into confusion and fear. Ethan, Grace's voice cracked. The energy of the room shifted palpably as her pulse raced. She took a step forward, and for a moment it seemed like she might rush towards him, but she hesitated, caught between joy and uncertainty. What are you doing here? I heard you were back in town, he replied coolly, pushing off the doorframe as he glanced around, soaking in the anxious expressions that surrounded him. Thought I'd drop in on the show. Looks like the old stories just won't die, will they? The tension thickened as people exchanged glances. Mike felt his heart rate skyrocket. The air was charged, pregnant with the weight of unspoken histories, old grudges, and buried secrets. He struggled to make sense of it all, to comprehend how the return of both Grace and Ethan could splinter the fragile hope they had just built. Derek, ever the opportunist, grinned as though Christmas had come early. So, the prodigal son returns. I must admit, this is a twist I didn't see coming. He leaned back in his chair, relishing the chaos unfolding. But tell me, Ethan, what do you really know about the settlement? Are you here to help this little community, or do you have another agenda? One that aligns with those who have an interest in cashing in? Ethan shot a sharp look at Derek. I'm not here for you, you worm. The disdain in his eyes burned brighter than any flicker of warmth he had once shared with this town. With a flick of his wrist, he brushed off the barbs. I came to see what's been happening, and I'll be damned if I let anyone take advantage of Grace or this place. Mike wasn't sure what to believe. Was Ethan truly back to defend them, or was this just another layer in Derek's web of deceit? The crowd was quiet, tension hanging like a thick fog that left them breathless. He could feel their collective fear inches away, palpable, pressed against him like a wall. Enough. Grace raised her voice, cutting through the uncertainty. Ethan, if you want to help, then we need to focus on what really matters. We can't let Derek win. We back each other up, just like we always should have. This is not about the past. But her fierce words didn't fully mask the distress etched in her features. Mike could see the blood drain from her face as reality dawned. Would the weight of their history drive them apart or unify them? The silence felt alive. The audience held its breath, waiting, doubting. Would Grace's family fractured and unexpectedly reunited be the anchor that held them steady against the storm rolling in? Suddenly, the front door burst open again. The wind howled, amplifying the sense of urgency. A reporter staggered in, breathless and wide-eyed. You need to see this. News just broke an hour ago there's something happening at the garden. Eyes widened, hearts raced. What fresh chaos awaited them? Just as Mike turned to process the full impact of this interruption, a shout erupted from the back. They're tearing it down. Right now. The stakes had just risen, and with time running out, they found themselves at the precipice. Would they be able to rally together, or would the threads of distrust and history unravel everything they had fought for? And who else was out there, waiting to pounce on their desperation? The room erupted into chaos. Voices clashed as panic surged like a wildfire. Mike's chest tightened as the words, "They're tearing it down," echoed in his mind, setting his heart racing. The garden, the one piece of untouched land they had all fought to keep, was now under siege. Ethan, Grace's voice cut through the torrent. What do we do? Ethan stepped forward, eyes narrowing. We can't waste time. We need to get there. If they start demolishing the garden, there'll be no stopping them. It's not just land. It's everything we are. Derek snorted dismissively, but the fear creeping into his expression revealed something deeper. You think rushing in there will help? We need a plan, not a mob. Mike shot him a glare. We don't have time for your strategy games. Those bastards are ruining our home. For a moment, everyone stood frozen, caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. A mix of anger, fear, and a desperate need for resolution hung in the air. Mike cast a sidelong glance at Grace. He could see their shared resolve reflected in her wide eyes. They had to move. "Let us go," Ethan barked, breaking the paralysis. He turned, striding toward the exit with purpose. "Who else with me?" One by one, people sprang into action. Grace, determination etched on her face, joined Ethan. Mike fell in step behind them, heart pounding as he saw a flicker of hope illuminating the uncertainty. Outside, the wind howled like a beast, fueling their adrenaline as they raced down the street toward the garden. Every step felt imprinted with urgency. Yard after yard of crumbling homes and worn paths. Minutes stretched like hours, the tension palpable. Was it too late? What if they arrived just to witness the destruction of everything they held dear? They rounded the corner, and there it was, the garden shrouded in the haunting remnants of their once vibrant sanctuary. Machinery loomed ominously at the perimeter, growling as workers began tearing into the earth. Mike's heart dropped. "Stop!" Grace's voice rang out with fierce defiance, cutting through the strident noise of the equipment. Her words hung in the air, challenging the encroaching threat. The workers turned, surprise flaring in their eyes as they noticed the relentless trio marching toward them. But it was the figure behind them, Derek's presence, that sent a wave of dread through the group. He slipped through the chaos with a slithering grin, a predator ready to strike. "You really think you can stop this?" he snarled, his voice dripping with contempt. "This garden is nothing more than prime real estate. You're wasting your breath." "We'll see about that," Ethan shot back, stepping closer. "You don't own this place. You were never welcome here." The tension thickened, both sides bristling like dogfighters before the first call to action. Mike felt an angry heat rising within him. They had come too far to back down now. "Let us fight for it," he shouted, rallying his support as he clutched Grace's hand tightly, feeling her trembling pulse. But before the group could react further, a deafening snap metal against wood sliced through the air. A crane began to move dangerously close to a massive oak tree at the heart of the garden, its roots entwined in history. Gasps erupted. Desperation clawed at the throat of every onlooker. "This is it," Grace whispered, her eyes wide with horror. "If they take that tree down, everything we've fought for will crumble." Derek stepped back, smug satisfaction curling at the corners of his mouth. "Let us poke the bear, shall we?" "What do you mean?" Mike seethed. The unfolding plan uncleared as the machinery inched closer. A figure suddenly emerged from the shadows behind the team. "That tree holds answers. It's more than just wood and leaves." Everyone turned, confusion palpable. Who was this stranger, and what did they mean? With the crane preparing to launch, a collective realization gripped the onlookers. Time was no longer on their side. Would they risk everything for the truth the tree might hold? Chaos was moments away, and so was the puzzle they had yet to grasp. The heavy machinery growled ominously, inching closer to the ancient oak. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of damp earth. That familiar, homey smell suddenly felt like a prelude to disaster. Mike's heart raced, frantically pounding against his ribs, drowning out all other noise. He glanced at Grace, her face pale, eyes wide, a storm of emotions swirling within them. "Who are you?" Ethan shot back at the stranger, whose presence felt like an unexpected jolt amidst the chaos. The figure stood tall, wrapped in a dark cloak that fluttered like a flag on a battlefield. "Names matter little now," the stranger replied, their voice low and almost melodic, as if every word danced through the air. "What matters is that tree. It stands at the crossroads of history. What you take for granted could unlock secrets you can't even imagine." "Secrets?" Mike echoed, uncertainty curling in his stomach. What could a tree possibly hold that was worth fighting for? But as he looked at the machine overhead, a chilling dread settled deep in him. Before he could think, Grace grabbed Mike in Ethan's arms. "We can't let them do this," she shouted, her fear crystallizing into action. "That tree could mean everything." "Like what?" Derek sneered, stepping forward. His demeanor had shifted, the confidence he wore just moments ago now tinged with annoyance. "Are you all going to bring a history book to save it? We can't just stand here." Ethan shouted back, narrowing his eyes at Derek. "You want to tear apart generations of what this place means? You don't get it, do you?" Derek shrugged, a menacing grin creeping back onto his face. You'll see soon enough. Once this garden is gone, it'll be a new beginning for the rest of us. The words hung in the atmosphere, thickening the air. No, Grace yelled, her voice a clarion call cutting through desperation. You might tear down a tree, but you'll never erase its roots. As if responding to her defiance, the crane lurched forward, a new shiver of terror racing through the gathered crowd. Mike felt a surge of adrenaline as he watched the machinery's claw glinting like a predator's teeth, poised to do its deed. Do something, he yelled at the others, but they seemed rooted to the spot, spellbound by fear. The cloaked figure stepped closer to the base of the tree, raising one hand. Stop! The command rang out with an authority that caused even Ethan to halt, eyes wide. Every eye, every heart, shifted towards this unknown figure, clinging to a message of hope that felt increasingly fragile. You don't understand, the stranger said again, lowering their voice to a whisper so loud it cut through the tension. The moment you lose this tree, you lose more than land. You lose a part of yourselves. A wave of uncertainty flooded Mike's mind. Was it worth risking everything for an unknown? Every second felt like a lifetime, as if the very fabric of their lives was poised to unravel. He locked eyes with Grace, and in that single shared glance, he felt her resolve ignite. Together, he whispered, barely audible over the machinery's din. As if on cue, Ethan shouted, "Focus. We need a plan." "Do we really?" Mike replied, a wild idea flipping through his mind. "What if we don't wait for them?" Before he could articulate the thought fully, the cloaked figure took a step forward, almost as though they understood. "Sometimes, you must reclaim what's yours, not wait for permission." Derek laughed, but it was a nervous laugh, one that echoed uncertainty. The crane moved again, its rusty gears grinding against each other as it closed in on the tree. Suddenly, something snapped within the group. "Now, we have to go?" Mike shouted, adrenaline spiking. And as chaos unfolded, the stranger's voice, steady and calm, rang out again in Mike's ears. "The truth is hidden, but it fights for its life. Protect it." As the team surged toward the machinery, fists clenched and hearts hammering, Mike could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on them. Would they find the strength to stand their ground? Or would the shadows of the past consume their future? The last moment hung in the air, the world around them a blur of terror and hope, as Derek shouted orders to the workers. But for Mike, the battle was only just beginning. Would they uncover the secrets buried within the garden, or would their courage be overshadowed by the encroaching gloom? The roar of the machinery was deafening, drowning out Mike's thoughts as he surged forward, his heart racing with the beat of a war drum. Every instinct screamed at him to protect the tree, but hope wavered like a candle in a storm. "Over here," Grace shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos as she darted toward the base of the crane. Mike's eyes followed her, the determination in her stride igniting a spark of courage within him. "Ethan, help me," Mike cried out, sprinting alongside Grace. They raced toward the machine, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Ethan sprang into action, his hesitation peeled away by the urgency of the moment. The cloaked figure fanned out a hand, still positioned near the tree, as if channeling some hidden power. "You must not just act, you must connect with its roots," they urged, urgency blending with their commanding presence. "Roots?" Mike repeated, confusion mingling with his resolve. He could feel the weight of secrets pressing down. This wasn't merely about saving the tree. It was about an essence, an ember buried deep within their history. The machine growled, the clang of metal reverberating through the air, making Mike's stomach twist. Derek barked orders to his crew, his confidence returning as he braced for the impending destruction. "Move it. We're finishing this now." The tension in the crowd snapped, people gasping and whispering in disbelief, their faces illuminated with fear and anticipation. What would happen if they failed? Mike glanced at Grace. The fierce resolve mirrored in her eyes fueled his resolve. "Let us dig deeper," she yelled, her voice rising above the fray. She lunged for the base of the machine, determined. With an unwavering grip, Mike reached for her arm, pulling her back just as a metal claw swooped dangerously close. "Are you crazy?" he shouted, fear mixing with admiration for her bravery. "We can't just barge in." Grace's brow furrowed, her voice a whisper now, filled with urgency. But what if we need to create a distraction? Give the tree a chance. Suddenly, surrounded by the throbbing thrum of chaos, a realization slammed into Mike. The roots, Grace. He exclaimed. We can't just defend it. We need to reach out for what it represents. Derek, sensing the shift in energy, glared at the group. You're wasting time. This is business, not a history lesson. His laughter was harsh, tainted by an underlying fear. But the anxiety swirling around Mike morphed into determination. We need to hold on, not just for us but for everyone. He dug his fingers into the earth, feeling the cool, damp soil surge against his palms. For those who came before us, and for those yet to come. In that instant, the cloaked figure stepped forward with startling grace, their voice reaching every corner of the fray. You have within you the power to alter fate. Join in this fight not as individuals, but as a collective. Tension transformed into action. We're not just saving a tree. Ethan reciprocated, rallying those around them. We're protecting history itself. Courage bloomed. Moments later, dozens of hands reached toward the tree, fingers gripping its ancient bark, pulling energy from the roots while they shouted in solidarity. This was no longer just a fight against machinery. It was a battle for identity. Mike felt the atmosphere thicken with something electric: belief, passion, communion. The tree, looming overhead, seemed to respond, its leaves rustling as if acknowledging them in their stand. But Derek was relentless. Get them away. Now. The crane jerked, the machinery stuttered, and a steel claw swung dangerously close to the group who stood rooted, courage like a shield before them. In that moment, Mike could feel the fabric of reality teetering, hanging on the brink of irrevocable change. Would they hold their ground? When a chilling scream ripped through the air, echoing with unexpected clarity, everyone froze. Run! The cry pierced the chaos, but as startled eyes searched for its source, danger lurked even closer than they could have imagined. Who would emerge from the shadows? And were they prepared for the battle that awaited them next? The scream resonated through the crowd like a gunshot, leaving a palpable silence in its wake. Eyes darted everywhere, searching for the source. Mike's grip tightened on Grace's arm as he scanned the thrumming energy of the crowd. What had they unleashed? The cloaked figure raised a hand, trying to calm the chaos. Stay together. Focus on the tree. Their voice, once powerful, now quivered under the weight of tension. Who screamed? Mike whispered urgently, his heart pounding. Something was wrong, very wrong. Panic rippled through the crowd, and the murmurs turned into a wild wave of fear. People were stepping back, glancing over their shoulders as if expecting an attack. Their once united front fractured, like a chain, under pressure. Ethan's voice broke through the cacophony. We can't lose faith now. Don't separate. He reached for a few of those nearest and rallied them. But their eyes betrayed their fear, looking past him and into the shadows creeping at the edges of the clearing. And then, out of that darkness, a figure emerged. The dim light from above flickered against a familiar face, but when Mike recognized it, his stomach dropped. It was Derek's brother, Caleb. He stood unsteady, wide-eyed like a deer caught in headlights. Caleb? Derek's voice faltered. His cool facade cracked. What are you doing here? Caleb staggered forward, breathless, as if every step cost him. Run. It's coming. It's not just a machine anymore. His warning surged through Mike like a shockwave. What do you mean? Something awakened when you all yelled. I felt it. Caleb gasped, staggering closer to the tree, his hand reaching toward the bark, as if in desperate connection. The ground beneath them quaked, reminiscent of a heartbeat, and Mike's heart raced in sync with it. Branches shook overhead, whispering secrets in a voice he could almost decipher. Derek's men began shouting, frantic, trying to make sense of the chaos. Stop him! Derek barked, as fearful energy ignited in his eyes. He's trying to sabotage everything. But Mike saw something different. Caleb's fear wasn't unfounded. It was a beacon. No, he's trying to warn us. Mike shouted, drowning out Derek's commands. Listen to him. From behind Caleb, shadows began to stir, coalescing into figures that were not human but dark shapes with glowing eyes, flickering amber like distant stars. The whispers began to grow into a swell, wrapping around them as Mike felt an urge to run or fight. Everyone, to the tree. Dig deep. Connect. Grace called out, throwing herself into the urgency of the moment. She dashed toward the tree, her fear transformed into fierce determination, urging people to follow. The cloaked figure nodded, eyes brightening with recognition. Mike hesitated, torn between the growing fear of the encroaching shadows and the allure of the tree that seemed to pulse with life. The roots beneath him throbbed, calling to him. "You can't leave," he yelled to the others. "We can't let him do this alone." The figures surged closer, melding shadows as a chilling breeze cut through the night. A force that could swallow them whole loomed just beyond the thrumming heart of the tree. "Stay together," Mike shouted again, and he saw unity flicker and brighten among the group. Hands reached out, palms sweaty and determined. But Derek was still shouting, fear creeping into his voice as he moved to push past Mike. "They'll kill us all. We have to retreat." Suddenly, Caleb screamed again, a slash of pain that echoed into the void. "Trust the tree. It will protect you if you believe." With a shuddering breath, Mike took a step forward, letting the energy from the comforting roots embrace him. "If you want to live, you have to fight. Together." The shadows writhed, climbing the machine, reaching streaks of darkness stretching out like clawing fingers, desperate to pull them into the night. Would they draw the line together, or would Derek's fear eclipse their last chance of hope? The struggle hung in the air, and a new kind of tension twisted among them. But somewhere inside that looming dread, sparks of defiance flickered. As he focused on that illumination, a new voice rose above the chaos, echoing from the tree itself. "The reckoning is near." What did it mean? And could they find strength against the shadows that waited hungrily to swallow them whole? The tension coiled tightly around Mike and Grace as the voice echoed through the air like a prayer, urging them to stand firm. Caleb's warning still hung like a dark cloud, but the flickers of determination ignited in the eyes of those around them. The shadows danced at the edges, but now they were no longer an overwhelming fear. They became a call to fight. "Trust the tree," Caleb shouted again, his voice breaking through the panic. "It knows what to do." Grace tightened her grip on Mike's hand, the warmth of her resolve shooting through him. "We need to reach the roots. They'll anchor us and give us strength." "Right," Ethan agreed, pushing closer to the tree. "We're not just defending ourselves. We're protecting everything this community stands for. Let us form a circle." People began to move instinctively, gathering close to the tree, hands intertwined. Mike felt the energy surge as more joined in, the weight of despair lifting slowly as unity blossomed. They formed a barrier, human shields against the encroaching dread. The shadows flickered closer, whispering threats that sliced through the night. But together they were powerful. They chanted, voices rising in harmony. "We stand for Maplewood. We stand for our strength." Each word tinged with hope, vibrating through the roots beneath them, intertwining their fates with the ancient tree. Mike could feel the trembling of the earth beneath him, a soft resonance that echoed with every commitment. For a fleeting moment, the shadows hesitated, as if caught in the light of their collective courage. He closed his eyes, envisioning each life that had nurtured the soil and tended to the land. "For those who came before us, and those who will come after." The shadows retreated, swirling back like agitated water, unsure of the force that swelled within them. Derek stood at the forefront, his bravado wavering, disbelief etched across his features. "You think this makes you invincible?" He spat, anger boiling within him. But Mike, summoning every ounce of conviction, shouted back, "You have no idea what this community truly is. We won't let greed trample our lives." Suddenly, the cloaked figure raised their arms to the sky, their voice piercing the chaos, resonating with the heartbeat of the earth. "Reveal your truth." The command resonated deeply, engulfing the grounded figures, and slowly, the colors returned to the garden, the vibrant hues of life, hope, and legacy intertwining with raw energy that burst forth like a firework igniting the night. With a mighty force, a wave surged from the tree, pushing the shadows back. Their glowing eyes blinked in confusion, but the humans stood firm. The roots dug deeper, amplifying the warmth of their unity, wrapping around their hearts with a fierce beauty. As the shadows pulled away, a gust swept through the garden, the kind that holds promises of renewal. The machinery froze, them not knowing how to respond. Derek stumbled backward, realization dawning like fog dissipating at dawn. "What is happening?" "It's too late for you," Mike replied, a calmness settling within him, emboldened by the power of their gathered strength. You underestimated us. We are rooted in this community, and we fight for each other. Caleb stepped forward boldly, now transformed by the light that streamed from the tree. He shouted to everyone surrounding him, now, together, let us protect what is ours. As they united their voices once more, the shadows finally shrank back, howling in frustration, overshadowed by the light radiating from the tree. The crane creaked as the machine itself became vulnerable. Push! Grace shouted, sweat trickling down her temples, determination sparking in her gaze. With collective energy, they spread their arms wide, channeling every ounce of anger, sorrow, and hope into a single moment. With an explosive burst, the shadows withdrew completely, a panicked retreat, a mingling cloud of repressed fear, giving way to the order of their collective wills. The tree stood tall and unwavering, its roots deep within the earth, an embodiment of their legacy. Derek fell to the ground, choking back anger and humiliation, staring at the garden that had come alive under a blanket of hope and unity. Around them, cheers rang out, tears of joy mixed with disbelief. Together, they shouted in unison, confidence flooding the atmosphere as a flood of warmth enveloped them. The cloaked figure smiled knowingly, stepping closer to the surface of the garden. You've embraced the truths within. Stay connected, and this land will flourish as long as you stand together. The community erupted into celebration, laughter spilling into an evening that had once been thick with despair. Beneath the towering tree, their heart, they connected, bonded by years of struggles and triumphs. As Mike looked around at the faces of his family, his friends, and even those who once doubted him, he felt a lump in his throat. They had forged something lasting, an unbreakable thread woven through their shared history. They turned towards Derek, who was left standing alone in his defeat, the shadows of greed evaporating with the clouds of ignorance. Owned not by one, but cherished by many. Maplewood thrives because we nurture it together, Mike said, voice strong yet tender, a promise to the earth they stood upon. And we will not waver again. Hand in hand, they stood resolute against the horizon, every heartbeat mingling with the essence of the land they loved. Forever transformed, they were not just a family, they were community, alive. Now, if you've loved this journey and want more incredible stories, you need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive chapters that will captivate your heart. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm. It really matters for us to keep spreading the love. Flood the comments section below with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about this ending. What do you think happened next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who also need to soak in this conclusion. True fans know the importance of community. Thank you for being here with us.